Today, I want to talk about something we've all experienced: the gap between what we know we should do and what we actually do. We all have goals, tasks, and responsibilities that are meaningful to us. And yet, so often we find ourselves procrastinating, making excuses, or waiting for the perfect moment to get started. But here's the truth: if you want to achieve anything significant, sometimes you simply have to force yourself to get it done. Discipline over motivation is a concept that may seem counterintuitive at first, especially since motivation is often celebrated as the driving force behind success. However, as many successful individuals have come to realize, motivation alone is inconsistent and fleeting. Motivation may get us started, but discipline is what keeps us moving forward, even when the initial excitement wears off. In a world filled with distractions and countless reasons to procrastinate, discipline becomes essential, acting as a steady foundation that keeps us on track, regardless of how we feel on any given day. Relying on discipline rather than motivation helps us cultivate habits, structures, and routines that ensure productivity and personal growth, even when enthusiasm is low. Motivation often emerges in short bursts, inspired by an external event, an inspiring story, or even a spontaneous realization of a new goal. For example, people may feel motivated to exercise after watching a fitness video, to start a project after hearing about a friend's success, or to study harder after receiving a poor test grade. But just as quickly as it comes, motivation can dissipate, leaving us vulnerable to the lure of procrastination and other distractions. This volatility makes motivation unreliable for long-term goals, which require consistent action over days, months, or even years. Relying on motivation to finish a complex project, improve a skill, or make a significant life change is like depending on sunny weather to drive every day. It's wonderful when it's there, but it's unpredictable and unreliable as a sole strategy. Discipline, on the other hand, is not about a feeling, it's about a decision. Discipline is the deliberate choice to stick with your plan, regardless of whether you feel motivated at that moment. People who are disciplined commit to taking small steps every day, even on days when the excitement has faded or when circumstances seem less than ideal. This approach builds resilience and confidence over time, as each instance of choosing discipline over procrastination reinforces a sense of personal reliability. As you make more disciplined choices, you also begin to view yourself as someone who is capable of staying committed, even when things are challenging. This self-concept becomes self-reinforcing, making it easier to stick with your goals in the long run. Discipline leads to consistency, and consistency is what truly drives progress. When you practice a skill daily, work on a project steadily, or keep up with a habit over time, you build a body of work that reflects your effort and growth. Small, consistent actions compound, creating noticeable progress that wouldn't be possible if you only took action when you felt motivated. For example, a writer who writes a little each day, even if uninspired, will eventually finish a book. A musician who practices regularly, even when feeling uninspired, will gradually improve their skill. This consistency helps you become proficient and productive, because you're taking action regularly and building on your efforts each time. In this way, discipline is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Each disciplined action strengthens your ability to make disciplined choices in the future. A disciplined approach also helps minimize decision fatigue, which can be a major obstacle in the modern world, where we are constantly inundated with choices. If we wait until we feel motivated, we often end up negotiating with ourselves about when or how we will work on our goals, which drains mental energy. Discipline allows us to create a plan and stick to it without needing to reassess our commitment every day. By establishing set routines, you don't waste time deciding whether you'll act, you simply follow the routine. For example, a person who commits to exercising every morning doesn't have to decide daily if they'll exercise. It becomes a non-negotiable part of their routine. This approach conserves energy for the actual work, allowing more focus on productivity and progress rather than internal debates. Discipline can also be seen as a form of self-respect and self-trust. When you are disciplined, you are essentially saying to yourself, "I value my time, my goals, and my commitments." Each time you follow through on a task, even when you don't feel like it, you reinforce your belief in your ability to achieve your goals. This builds inner confidence and a strong sense of self-worth, which are essential for long-term fulfillment. In contrast, relying solely on motivation can often lead to feelings of inadequacy or disappointment. When motivation wanes and you don't take action, you may feel guilty or frustrated with yourself, leading to negative self-perceptions. Discipline, however, helps you avoid this emotional roller coaster by keeping you steady and consistent in your efforts. Over time, this steadiness creates a foundation of trust within yourself, knowing that you'll continue to work toward your goals regardless of the circumstances. Moreover, discipline empowers you to take control of your life. If you're only willing to take action when you feel motivated, then you're at the mercy of external factors, waiting for the right mood or the right inspiration to come along. In contrast, discipline puts you in the driver's seat, allowing you to shape your actions according to your own choices rather than external conditions. This sense of agency can be profoundly empowering, as it shifts the responsibility for success to yourself rather than to outside forces. When you're disciplined, you recognize that success is within your control, a product of your own actions and choices. To cultivate discipline, it's essential to start with small commitments and gradually build up. Forcing yourself to make massive changes all at once can be overwhelming and unsustainable. Instead, start with a single habit or a manageable daily action. Each small success strengthens your discipline and makes the next step easier. Over time, this approach can transform your entire approach to productivity and personal growth, leading to more sustained and meaningful progress than relying on motivation alone. In conclusion, while motivation may give us a spark, discipline is the fuel that keeps the fire burning. Discipline enables us to take consistent action, builds self-confidence, conserves mental energy, and empowers us to take control of our lives. Unlike motivation, which can fluctuate based on external factors and mood, discipline is a steady force we can rely on to achieve our goals, big or small. By choosing discipline over motivation, we commit to a path of steady, meaningful growth, regardless of how we feel in the moment. And in doing so, we unlock our full potential. Starting small to build momentum is a powerful approach to tackling large projects, goals, or habits that might initially seem overwhelming. Often the thought of a big task can create a sense of dread or procrastination when we think about everything that needs to be done. It's easy to feel paralyzed and avoid starting altogether. However, by breaking down our goals into small, manageable steps, we create a pathway to success that doesn't feel intimidating. Each small action we take not only gets us closer to the end goal, but also builds the kind of momentum that can carry us through challenges, creating positive habits that help us sustain progress over time. Momentum, by its nature, grows over time. Just as pushing a heavy object starts off slow but becomes easier as it builds speed, making progress on a task becomes easier as we take small, consistent steps toward it. The initial push may be the hardest, but every small step forward fuels the next. By focusing on these small steps, we make the path to our goal more manageable. When we take just 5 minutes to work on a task or achieve one small step in a larger goal, it gives us a small win. This small win boosts our confidence, showing us that progress is possible and helping to reduce the intimidation of the larger task. Each time we experience success, even in small amounts, it makes us more likely to take the next step. Our success breeds success, and this creates a positive feedback loop of momentum. This approach also helps us break down mental resistance, which is often one of the biggest obstacles to getting started. The brain has a natural tendency to avoid discomfort and gravitate toward what's easy and familiar. When we think of a large goal in its entirety, the discomfort of tackling it can feel overwhelming. However, small steps lower the barrier to entry. Instead of focusing on the daunting nature of the entire task, we can tell ourselves, I just need to do this one small part. By reframing the goal as a series of small actions, we trick the brain into seeing it as less intimidating. This reduction in resistance allows us to start more easily, as there is less mental energy required to overcome hesitation. Each small action we take proves to ourselves that we're capable of working toward our goal, even if the steps are minor. Over time, the mind becomes conditioned to see these small steps as less threatening, making it easier to keep going and build momentum. Consistency is one of the greatest benefits of taking small steps. Big leaps might be appealing, but they're rarely sustainable over long periods. Small steps, on the other hand, are more realistic and achievable, allowing us to develop a routine and stick with it. For instance, if someone wants to start exercising regularly, but isn't used to it, attempting to work out intensely for an hour every day might lead to burnout or discouragement. However, starting with just 5 or 10 minutes a day is manageable, even on busy or low-energy days. This small, consistent commitment is what forms habits. As these small actions become routine, they gradually become part of our identity and lifestyle. This consistency compounds over time, and as we stay committed, we eventually achieve far more than if we had only taken big, unsustainable actions sporadically. Moreover, starting small helps us see progress, which is a key factor in staying motivated over the long term. Human beings are wired to seek progress and improvement when we see evidence of our advancement. Even in small ways, it's reinforcing and keeps us motivated to continue. Small steps provide frequent moments of achievement, no matter how minor. Each completed action is a small success, and these accumulate over time. By making steady, incremental progress, we can see our goals gradually taking shape. This makes us feel more competent and in control, which increases our motivation to keep going. It's like climbing a mountain. Each step may be small, but with each one, the peak seems closer. This sense of progress keeps us moving forward, especially when the bigger picture feels overwhelming. One of the greatest advantages of this approach is that it allows us to adapt and refine our methods along the way. When we take small steps, we give ourselves the chance to evaluate what's working and what isn't without a huge investment of time or energy. This flexibility lets us learn from each step and make adjustments that improve our efficiency and effectiveness. If we find that one approach isn't working well, we can change course without feeling like we've wasted significant effort. In this way, small steps encourage a mindset of experimentation and learning, which can be highly beneficial in the long run. Instead of seeing setbacks as failures, we can view them as opportunities to refine our approach, using each small step as a learning experience. Building momentum through small steps also enhances our resilience. Large tasks often come with setbacks, and when we're focused on big leaps, these setbacks can feel discouraging and difficult to overcome. However, when we're moving forward gradually, each small step strengthens our resolve and builds our tolerance for challenges. By making progress incrementally, we develop the resilience needed to keep going, even when we encounter obstacles. Each small action reinforces our commitment, making us more resistant to giving up. This resilience becomes especially valuable when facing unexpected challenges because we have already developed the habit of taking action, regardless of the difficulty. In addition, taking small steps is a form of self-compassion. It's a recognition that we don't need to pressure ourselves into doing everything at once. Sometimes our expectations can be unrealistic, and we may feel discouraged when we don't immediately accomplish everything we hope to. Small steps allow us to make meaningful progress without overloading ourselves, which can prevent burnout and reduce stress. By allowing ourselves to move forward at a steady, manageable pace, we're treating ourselves with kindness and acknowledging that growth and progress don't have to come at the expense of our well-being. This compassionate approach can improve our relationship with our goals, making them feel more achievable and less like sources of pressure or stress. Ultimately, starting small to build momentum is about creating a sustainable path to success. By focusing on small, manageable steps, we build confidence, reduce mental resistance, and make consistent progress. We experience a sense of accomplishment with each action, strengthening our commitment and motivation over time. Rather than feeling overwhelmed by the enormity of a goal, we can focus on each step, knowing that each one brings us closer to where we want to be. Through this steady, patient approach, we can achieve far more than we might have thought possible, building habits, resilience, and a mindset of continuous growth along the way. In this way, small steps are not only effective but transformative, giving us the momentum we need to reach our greatest goals. Overcoming mental resistance is often the key to making meaningful progress on any task or goal, as it addresses the underlying reasons why we avoid starting or continuing. Mental resistance, which includes procrastination, self-doubt, fear of failure, or even just a lack of motivation, is a common challenge. This resistance can arise from various sources, such as our internal fear of not being good enough, the perceived difficulty of the task, or simply the comfort of staying within familiar routines rather than pushing ourselves to take action. However, understanding and actively working to overcome mental resistance is essential if we want to create lasting change and achieve our goals. One of the primary forms of mental resistance is procrastination, which is often a coping mechanism to avoid discomfort or stress. When faced with a big, challenging task, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, and procrastination offers a temporary relief by allowing us to escape the pressure. But this avoidance usually leads to more stress and frustration later, as the task remains unfinished and the deadline looms closer. The more we delay, the more challenging it becomes to actually start, as the task grows in our minds and seems even more daunting. To overcome procrastination, it's helpful to acknowledge that starting is often the hardest part. Taking just one small action, like writing the first sentence of a report, organizing your workspace, or setting up the materials you need, can often break through the initial barrier and make the task feel more manageable. By breaking the cycle of avoidance, even with a small action, we start to see that progress is possible, which reduces the power of procrastination over time. Self-doubt is another significant source of mental resistance. When we lack confidence in our ability to succeed, we may hesitate to even begin, fearing that our efforts will be inadequate or that we'll fail altogether. Self-doubt often stems from negative self-talk or from past experiences where things didn't go as planned. If we carry those memories or thoughts with us, they can create a powerful internal barrier to action. Overcoming self-doubt requires a shift in mindset, where we learn to see each action as a step in the learning process rather than a test of our abilities. One way to combat self-doubt is by reframing our thoughts and focusing on progress rather than perfection. Instead of worrying about whether we'll succeed on the first try, we can remind ourselves that every attempt, no matter the outcome, contributes to our growth. When we view each step as a chance to learn rather than as a measure of our worth, it becomes easier to take action without being held back by self-doubt. Fear of failure is closely related to self-doubt and can be a formidable obstacle in itself. Many of us hesitate to start because we fear that we'll make mistakes or that we won't meet our own or others' expectations. This fear can be paralyzing, especially if we're aiming for something important or meaningful. However, it's important to recognize that failure is a natural part of any journey toward growth and achievement. In fact, many of the most successful people in history have faced countless failures before reaching their goals. To overcome the fear of failure, we can reframe our perspective on it, viewing failure as feedback rather than as an endpoint. When we make mistakes or encounter setbacks, we have an opportunity to learn from them and improve our approach. By focusing on the lessons rather than the losses, we can reduce the hold that fear of failure has over us and continue moving forward with resilience and determination. Another form of mental resistance is the tendency to be overly focused on the end result, which can make the journey itself feel burdensome. When we fixate on how much is left to accomplish, it's easy to become discouraged, as the goal may seem too distant or difficult. This focus on the outcome rather than the process can make each step feel like an ordeal. To overcome this, it's useful to shift our attention to the present moment and take things one step at a time. By focusing on the task immediately in front of us, we can reduce the pressure of the bigger picture and allow ourselves to engage fully in each action. This approach not only helps to make each step more enjoyable but also builds momentum, as each completed task brings us closer to the overall goal. By directing our energy toward the process rather than fixating on the outcome, we can reduce resistance and stay motivated. Perfectionism is another common mental barrier that can prevent us from taking action. When we hold ourselves to impossibly high standards, we may delay starting a task because we fear that it won't be done perfectly. This desire for perfection can keep us stuck in a cycle of planning and preparation, never feeling ready to begin. However, waiting for perfection is often just a form of procrastination. To overcome perfectionism, it's helpful to adopt a mindset of progress over perfection. Instead of trying to do everything perfectly, focus on making steady progress, understanding that improvement comes with practice and time. Accepting that our first attempts may be imperfect frees us from the unrealistic expectations that hinder our ability to start. By embracing imperfection, we allow ourselves to make progress, knowing that we can refine and improve as we go. Mental resistance can also stem from a lack of clarity about what needs to be done. When a task feels vague or unstructured, it's hard to know where to begin, and this uncertainty can lead to procrastination. One effective strategy for overcoming this type of resistance is to break down the task into clear, manageable steps. When we clarify what needs to be done, each step becomes less intimidating, and we gain a sense of control over the process. Creating a list or a plan can help us see the path forward, making it easier to take the first step and then the next. As we move through each defined step, we build momentum, and the task feels less daunting. By bringing clarity to our goals, we reduce the mental resistance associated with uncertainty. In overcoming mental resistance, self-compassion plays a crucial role. Sometimes we're hard on ourselves for not feeling motivated or for experiencing hesitation. This self-criticism can actually increase resistance, as it adds an extra layer of negativity to the experience. Instead, practicing self-compassion allows us to acknowledge that resistance is normal and that it's okay to take things step by step. By being kind to ourselves, we create an environment of encouragement rather than pressure. This mindset makes it easier to approach tasks with a sense of curiosity and openness, rather than judgment, making it more likely that we'll overcome resistance and take action. In sum, mental resistance is a challenge that we all face, but it doesn't have to stop us from achieving our goals. By breaking down tasks, reframing our approach to failure, focusing on the present moment, and practicing self-compassion, we can overcome the inner barriers that hold us back. Each small step we take reduces resistance, builds confidence, and brings us closer to our goals. The key is to understand that resistance is natural, and by addressing it thoughtfully, we can learn to move through it, making steady, meaningful progress toward our aspirations. Setting short timers to get started on tasks is an effective strategy for overcoming procrastination and breaking through the mental barriers that often prevent us from beginning work on challenging or time-consuming goals. This technique is simple yet powerful because it addresses one of the most common obstacles to productivity, the fear or resistance we feel before starting the task. By committing to only a brief period of focused effort, we reduce the pressure to complete the entire task all at once and lower the psychological barriers to getting started. This approach often leads to surprising results, as the short burst of activity can spark motivation and build momentum, helping us to continue working beyond the initial timer. In this way, short timers serve as a bridge between the intention to work and the actual act of working, allowing us to break the cycle of procrastination and begin making progress. One of the primary benefits of setting a short timer is that it reduces the mental load associated with a large or overwhelming task. When we view a task as something that will take hours or require extensive focus, it's easy to feel intimidated and avoid starting. However, by setting a timer for a brief period, say 5, 10, or 15 minutes, we make the task feel smaller and more manageable. This technique is effective because it minimizes the commitment required to get started. Rather than focusing on the entire task, we only need to commit to a short period of time, which is often enough to make the prospect of working seem less daunting. Once we begin, the task usually feels more approachable, and we may find ourselves willing to continue even after the timer goes off. Using short timers also creates a sense of urgency that can improve focus and efficiency. Knowing that we only have a limited amount of time helps to reduce distractions and focus our energy on the task at hand. When we set a timer, we give ourselves a clear deadline which can motivate us to work more efficiently. This technique is particularly useful for tasks that tend to drag on or lose our attention, as it encourages us to concentrate fully for a set period, rather than getting sidetracked by unrelated thoughts or distractions. With a timer running, we are more likely to stay on track, making the most of each minute. This increased focus not only helps us to get started, but also allows us to accomplish more within a shorter time frame. A significant psychological advantage of using short timers is that they help us break the cycle of perfectionism. Often we hesitate to begin tasks because we worry that we won't be able to complete them to a high standard, or we feel that we need everything to be perfect before starting. This perfectionist mindset can be paralyzing, as it creates a fear of not meeting our own or others' expectations. By setting a short timer, we give ourselves permission to work on the task without the pressure of perfection. Since the timer is only running for a brief period, we can approach the task with a sense of experimentation, allowing ourselves to make mistakes or focus on progress rather than perfection. This freedom to work imperfectly can be liberating, as it reduces the internal pressure and helps us to build momentum, even if we're not producing flawless results immediately. The act of starting small with a short timer also builds confidence over time. Each time we set a timer and begin working, we reinforce a habit of taking action, regardless of how we feel in the moment. This repeated practice of starting builds a sense of self-efficacy, the belief that we are capable of taking control and making progress on our goals. As we experience success in small increments, our confidence grows, making it easier to take on larger tasks and more significant challenges. Over time, the simple act of setting a timer and starting work becomes a source of empowerment, as we see ourselves as capable of tackling even the tasks that once seemed overwhelming. This shift in self-perception helps us to cultivate a proactive approach to our work and our goals, making us more resilient in the face of challenges. Setting short timers also helps us build momentum, which is crucial for productivity and goal achievement. When we set a timer and make a start, we create a sense of forward movement that often leads us to continue working even after the timer has ended. For example, we may set a timer for 10 minutes to begin a report, only to find ourselves still working 30 minutes later, because we're now engaged in the task. This momentum-building effect is sometimes referred to as the Zeigarnik effect, which suggests that we are more likely to continue a task once we have started it, as our brains have a natural desire to complete what has been started. In this way, short timers serve as an effective entry point that allows us to break through initial resistance and build the momentum needed to keep going. Another benefit of using short timers is that it allows us to make consistent, incremental progress, which is especially valuable for long-term projects or goals. By committing to just a few minutes each day, we make steady progress over time, turning a potentially overwhelming task into something achievable. This incremental approach is highly effective for large projects, as it prevents us from feeling bogged down by the enormity of the work. With each short session, we chip away at the task, building on our progress bit by bit. Over weeks or months, these small increments accumulate, leading to significant progress. This steady approach helps to cultivate patience and persistence, as we learn to trust in the power of consistent, small efforts rather than relying on sudden bursts of motivation or last-minute rushes. The short timer method also provides a practical way to test and adjust our strategies without significant investment. For tasks that are unfamiliar or particularly challenging, it's common to feel unsure of where to start or how to approach the work effectively. By setting a short timer, we give ourselves a trial period to explore different strategies, test out new methods, or brainstorm ideas. This exploratory approach allows us to experiment without feeling committed to a specific strategy for hours on end. If something doesn't work, we can adjust our approach for the next session, refining our process as we go. This flexible, iterative method encourages us to learn from each session, improving our efficiency and effectiveness over time. In addition, setting short timers can make work feel more enjoyable and reduce stress. When we know we're only working for a limited period, the task feels less like an obligation and more like a small, manageable challenge. This shift in perspective can make even mundane or difficult tasks feel more engaging, as we focus on making the most of the brief session. Knowing that a break or change of pace is coming up can reduce feelings of dread and make the work feel less burdensome. By breaking work into these small timed intervals, we also avoid the exhaustion that can come from prolonged periods of focus, helping us to maintain energy and enthusiasm for longer. Ultimately, setting short timers is a powerful tool for overcoming procrastination, breaking through resistance, and making steady progress on tasks and goals. This simple yet effective approach helps us to start without feeling overwhelmed, build momentum, stay focused, and develop confidence in our ability to tackle even the most daunting tasks. With each session, we reinforce the habit of starting and taking action, creating a positive cycle of productivity and progress that can transform our approach to work and personal goals over time. Focusing on consistency over intensity is a highly effective strategy for achieving long-term goals, building sustainable habits, and creating lasting change. When people embark on new goals or projects, they often make the mistake of putting intense effort into it at the beginning, only to burn out or lose motivation quickly. While intense bursts of activity might provide a strong start, they are often unsustainable over the long term. Consistency, on the other hand, is about creating a manageable, repeatable routine that can be maintained day after day, week after week. By prioritizing consistency, we develop habits that not only bring us closer to our goals, but also help us stay engaged and committed for the long haul. One of the primary reasons why consistency is more effective than intensity is that it helps to build habits. When we repeat an action regularly, it becomes more automatic, reducing the amount of mental energy required to get started each time. This is the foundation of habit formation. The more we practice a behavior, the easier and more natural it becomes. For example, if someone wants to build a habit of exercising, it's far better to commit to 10 or 15 minutes of exercise daily than to go all out for an hour on rare occasions. The daily routine conditions the brain and body to expect that activity, gradually making it easier to stick with it over time. This consistency creates a positive feedback loop, as the habit reinforces itself through repetition. Eventually, what once required significant effort and motivation becomes a natural part of the daily routine. Consistency also builds momentum, which is essential for maintaining progress toward any goal. When we engage in small, regular actions, we create a steady stream of progress. Even if the steps are minor, they add up over time and keep us moving forward. In contrast, intense but sporadic efforts often lead to a stop-and-start cycle, which can disrupt progress and make it harder to stay committed. Each time we restart after a break, we have to overcome the mental resistance and inertia that comes with it. By staying consistent, even with small actions, we avoid these disruptions and build a continuous rhythm of progress. This momentum is motivating in itself, as each step forward reinforces the belief that we are capable of reaching our goals, making it easier to keep going. Another advantage of focusing on consistency over intensity is that it creates a more realistic and sustainable approach to goal setting. Intense efforts often feel exciting at the outset, but they can quickly become overwhelming, leading to burnout or discouragement. Many people quit their goals or abandon their new habits because they try to do too much too soon. Consistency, however, is about setting manageable targets that can be sustained over time. By focusing on small, regular actions, we reduce the likelihood of burnout and make it easier to integrate the new behavior into our lives. This approach respects our natural limitations and allows us to gradually build up our capacity, rather than pushing ourselves too hard, too fast. For example, someone learning a new language might find it more effective to practice for 15 minutes daily, rather than studying for 2 hours once a week. This daily consistency creates familiarity with the language, while the shorter duration prevents exhaustion and frustration. Consistency also helps to improve skills and deepen understanding over time. Mastery in any field requires ongoing practice, and there are no shortcuts to acquiring deep knowledge or skills. Intense, infrequent efforts don't provide the same opportunity for growth and learning as consistent practice does. When we practice consistently, we give ourselves the chance to make gradual improvements, refine our technique, and learn from each experience. For instance, if someone wants to become a better writer, writing a little each day is far more effective than cramming in a lot of writing all at once. Each daily session builds on the previous one, allowing for steady progress and helping the writer to improve their style, voice, and clarity over time. Consistent effort provides the space for reflection and adjustment, fostering a growth mindset that is essential for long-term improvement. One of the powerful aspects of consistency is that it helps to reinforce commitment and discipline. When we engage in a behavior consistently, we are telling ourselves that it is a priority. Each day that we follow through on our commitment, we strengthen our self-discipline and reinforce the idea that we are capable of sticking to our intentions. This daily discipline builds resilience, as we learn to push through even when we may not feel motivated or inspired. By contrast, intense but irregular efforts often depend heavily on motivation, which can fluctuate greatly. When we rely solely on motivation, it's easy to skip days when we're feeling tired, busy, or uninspired. Consistency, however, trains us to work toward our goals regardless of our immediate feelings, cultivating a sense of responsibility and dedication that can carry us through challenges. Furthermore, consistency allows us to track progress more effectively, providing a clearer picture of our improvement over time. When we engage in a regular activity, we can measure our performance, observe patterns, and see how we're improving. This steady, measurable progress is encouraging and provides valuable insights into what is working and what needs adjustment. For example, someone tracking their fitness goals can see how their strength or endurance improves gradually with daily effort. This record of progress can serve as a powerful motivator, reinforcing the belief that small, consistent actions lead to meaningful results. In contrast, sporadic efforts make it difficult to see patterns or track improvement, as there is less data and consistency to observe. Consistency also fosters adaptability and resilience, as it allows us to respond more effectively to challenges or changes. When we engage in regular, manageable actions, we develop a routine that can be adjusted without losing momentum. For example, if a person commits to writing daily but has an unexpectedly busy week, they can still maintain the habit by writing for just 5 minutes instead of their usual 15. This flexibility keeps the habit alive, allowing the person to adapt without breaking their commitment. Intensity, however, often doesn't allow for this kind of flexibility, as it relies on high levels of energy or time that may not always be available. By focusing on consistency, we create a routine that can adapt to life's fluctuations, making it more resilient and enduring. Lastly, a consistent approach helps us to build a positive relationship with the process itself. Goals that rely solely on intense efforts can create a sense of dread or pressure, as we associate the work with strain and exhaustion. Consistent, smaller efforts, however, allow us to enjoy the journey and engage more fully with each step. This shift in perspective helps to create intrinsic motivation, as we come to appreciate the process itself, rather than just the end result. When we value the journey, we are more likely to stay committed, as the process feels fulfilling and meaningful on its own. In summary, consistency over intensity is a powerful approach to achieving long-term success. By focusing on small, manageable actions, we build habits, create momentum, avoid burnout, and deepen our skills and understanding. Consistency reinforces commitment, tracks progress, builds resilience, and fosters a positive relationship with our goals. Through steady, repeated efforts, we transform our goals into sustainable habits that become integral to our lives. Rather than relying on bursts of intense effort, which are often unsustainable, consistency creates a pathway to lasting change, allowing us to achieve meaningful progress while building the discipline and adaptability needed to succeed. Embracing the discomfort of starting is a critical skill for achieving our goals and personal growth. Yet it's something many of us struggle with. Beginning a new project or task often comes with an initial wave of resistance, feelings of doubt, fear, or a desire to avoid the challenge altogether. This discomfort can be overwhelming, pushing us to procrastinate or make excuses, even if the task is something we genuinely want to complete. However, learning to accept and work through this discomfort, rather than avoiding it, is essential for making meaningful progress. When we acknowledge and embrace this initial challenge, we cultivate resilience, build confidence, and set ourselves on a path toward achieving our goals more consistently. One reason why starting can feel uncomfortable is because our minds often exaggerate the effort or difficulty involved. In psychology, this is sometimes known as the anticipatory anxiety effect, where we overestimate how challenging or unpleasant a task will be. When we think about starting, we focus on the potential obstacles or the amount of work involved, which can make the task seem far more daunting than it actually is. For example, the thought of writing a report, completing a workout, or studying for an exam might feel overwhelming when considered as a whole. Our minds fixate on the entire scope of the task, amplifying its difficulty and triggering feelings of anxiety or resistance. However, once we begin, we often realize that the task is more manageable than we initially thought. The discomfort starts to fade as we become immersed in the activity. Understanding that this anticipatory discomfort is often temporary and exaggerated can help us approach tasks more realistically and make it easier to take the first step. Another reason starting is difficult is due to our desire for comfort and familiarity. Our brains are wired to avoid discomfort and uncertainty because they represent potential threats. This is a survival instinct that served humans well in the past, but it can work against us in modern contexts where growth and success often require us to move outside of our comfort zones. Embracing the discomfort of starting means acknowledging this natural resistance and choosing to act despite it. For instance, if we're starting a new job, learning a new skill, or embarking on a fitness journey, the discomfort is natural because we're stepping into unknown territory. When we learn to accept this initial discomfort as a normal part of growth, we become better equipped to push through it. Over time, we train ourselves to be comfortable with discomfort, which can help us in every area of life as we become more open to challenges and new experiences. One practical way to embrace the discomfort of starting is to develop a mindset of curiosity and learning. Rather than viewing each new task as something to master immediately or as a test of our abilities, we can approach it as a learning experience. This shift in perspective reduces the pressure we place on ourselves and allows us to view each step as valuable in its own right. For example, if someone is nervous about public speaking, they might focus on the potential for mistakes or failure. However, if they approach each speaking opportunity as a chance to improve their skills, they can begin to see the discomfort as part of the learning process. This mindset encourages growth rather than perfection and reminds us that each beginning brings new insights, skills, and opportunities for improvement. By staying curious and open to the process, we become more resilient to discomfort, as we understand it's simply a part of learning and growing. Taking small steps is another effective method for embracing the discomfort of starting. When a task seems overwhelming, breaking it down into smaller, more manageable pieces can make it feel less intimidating. For example, if someone is trying to write a book, the idea of completing an entire manuscript might be paralyzing. But by focusing on writing just one page or even one paragraph a day, they can reduce the discomfort associated with starting. Each small step not only makes the task feel more achievable, but also helps to build confidence and momentum. These small actions create a sense of progress which can motivate us to keep going even when the task is challenging. By focusing on manageable steps, we lower the initial resistance and make it easier to start, allowing us to gradually build comfort with the task at hand. Another strategy for embracing the discomfort of starting is to practice self-compassion. Often we are our own harshest critics, judging ourselves for feeling hesitant, unmotivated, or fearful at the outset. This self-criticism only adds to the discomfort and can make it harder to begin. Practicing self-compassion involves treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding we would offer a friend. If a friend were feeling nervous about starting a new job or struggling to begin a big project, we would likely offer them encouragement rather than criticism. By extending this kindness to ourselves, we can reduce the fear of failure and create a mental space that is more conducive to action. Self-compassion allows us to accept that discomfort is a natural part of starting something new and reminds us that it's okay to take things one step at a time. This supportive mindset helps us to approach tasks without added pressure, making it easier to begin. Understanding that discomfort is temporary can also help us embrace the challenge of starting. Often, the hardest part of any task is simply taking that first step. Once we're underway, the discomfort tends to diminish as we get into the flow of the activity. For instance, someone who dreads exercising might find that the first few minutes are the hardest, but once they're moving, they start to feel better. This pattern holds true for many tasks, as our brains and bodies adapt once we get past the initial barrier. Recognizing that the discomfort of starting is often fleeting can help us build the courage to push through it. Knowing that relief is just around the corner can be a powerful motivator to take that first step and keep going. Finally, it can be helpful to reframe discomfort as a sign of progress rather than something negative. Discomfort is often a sign that we are stretching ourselves, pushing beyond our usual boundaries, and moving closer to our goals. When we're too comfortable, we're usually not challenging ourselves or growing. Embracing discomfort as a positive signal of growth helps to change our relationship with it. For example, an athlete might experience discomfort when pushing through a tough workout, but they understand that this discomfort is part of building strength and endurance. Similarly, someone pursuing a professional goal might feel anxious during their first big presentation, but that nervous energy signals that they're stepping up and advancing in their career. By viewing discomfort as a necessary and beneficial part of progress, we can approach it with a sense of acceptance and even appreciation. In sum, learning to embrace the discomfort of starting is a crucial skill for achieving long-term goals and personal growth. By understanding that discomfort is often exaggerated, recognizing it as a sign of growth, and taking small steps, we can make it easier to begin new tasks. A mindset of curiosity and self-compassion further helps us to stay resilient and open to the learning process. Ultimately, the discomfort of starting is just the beginning of a journey, one that becomes more rewarding and fulfilling as we progress. Embracing this discomfort helps us develop the resilience, confidence, and self-discipline needed to keep moving forward, making it easier to tackle new challenges and pursue our goals wholeheartedly.